Let's move on to Section 2, Handling, Sampling, and Construction of Masonry. Material and storage handling is covered under TMS 602-16. This covers the damage and containment of materials. Materials must be stored off-ground and protected from the elements. Masonry units may not be wetted unless approved, and rebar must be free and loose of all rust and other coatings prior to placement. This picture indicates the material handling and storage of blocks. As you see, the blocks are maintained dry and off the ground. The proper material handling of mortar is shown in this picture. As you can see, the mortar is delivered in a plastic container to keep it from the elements, and it is stored off the ground, free of water and moisture. The special inspection requirements are the same. The masonry inspector must be approved by DSA, and you can check the masonry inspector current certification by checking the DSA certified masonry checklist. The masonry special inspection has not changed drastically. It covers level 3 quality assurance. Level 3 is for building and structures, and level 2 is for near end inspections. DSI IR 21-1 now clarifies requirements for DSA tests and inspection for non-structural walls. You can check this under the DSA approved CDs or from the DSA 103 testing and inspection requirements. Also covered under the material sampling and testing is that of the block, the mortar, and the grout, which is based on F prime of M. This is covered under the unit strength method of TMS 602-16. It should be in compliance with F prime of N of 2000 psi and based on compressive test results for the masonry units, mortar, and grout, and should be specified on the plans and specification. The second type of testing for block, mortar, and grout is when the F prime of M is specified greater than 2000 psi. This is covered in TMS 602-16. The prison and mortar and grout shall be tested prior to construction, and prison tests and core tests should be taken during construction. There should be 3 tests for every 5,000 square foot of wall area constructed. Material and testing of the masonry units themselves are covered in 3 references. The TMS 602-16 Article 2.3 is for CMU. The TMS 504-16 is for architectural cast stone. And the ASTM C16-17 is for adhered manufactured stone masonry veneers. Also, the masonry units must be tested per ASTM C90 for load-bearing CMU. The required tests need to be specified on the plans. Normally, 1 or 2 specimens are taken from each lot and tested to meet the 2000 psi requirements. Also covered in the material sampling and testing is that of mortar, which is covered under TMS 402-16 for Type S mortar for exterior glass units in masonry. And CBC 2103A.4 covers the metal reinforcing accessories, which is also covered under DSA IR 1710. Also new this year is that testing is not required on identified rebar for TMS 1602-16. For unidentified rebar, a minimum of 3 tensile tests and 3 bend tests are required for each shipment and each grade. This is covered in Section 1910A.2 of the CBC and also DSA IR 1710. There has been a change in the maximum height for low-lift construction. The old requirement was 4 foot 0 inch max per pour. There is an exception for blocks that are 10 inch and larger, that a single pour can now be 5 foot 4 inches in height. There also is a clarification in the masonry core testing, that you only need 1 core test for non-structural walls with maximum height of 9 foot 0 above the top of foundation. The compressive strength of the masonry is specified in the CBC 2105A.2. This should be required on the plans and specifications. 2000 psi 28-day strength can use the unit strength tests alone. For anything greater than 2000 psi, prism tests must be constructed prior to construction. For existing walls, you can cut a wall out per TMS 602-6 and the prism test performed on that. The testing in the mortar has not changed. The minimum strength is still per ASTM C720 Table 1. It should begin at the beginning of work and tested 3 successive days. Additional samples of material are required per DSA or the architect or engineer of record. When specific portions are specified, sample and testing during construction per ASTM C90 Annex 4.5 to verify compliance with the specifications. In addition, if the mortar is properly specified, the lab shall prepare and test the mix. When using a prism strength method, the mortar does not need to be tested. Also, the sampling and testing may be exempt if they use pre-blended mortars that conform to ASTM C720 with a valid evaluation report. Also, the mortar testing can be reduced where non-shear walls are less than 12 foot in height. The material sampling of grout has not changed. Samples of each mix must be taken each day and for every 5,000 square foot of masonry wall area. The minimum strength has been referenced to a new reference 1602-16. Additional samples must be taken if the material of the grout changes, and if you use the prism method, no grout or mortar tests are required. What's new to the code is that the CBC Chapter 2105A.5 and 21A.6, which used to cover prisms and unit strength, has been changed to specifically reference the TMS 602-16. This is a change in the code and the referencing procedure. This is a picture of a prism test using 9 blocks so they can sample 9 different grouts. The blocks will be required to be cut to size to be tested at a later date. Cold weather conditions for masonry is covered in TMS 1602-16. This is required when the temperatures drop less than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Special details or requirements shall be provided for masonry when that temperature is reached. Cold weather construction is broken into 4 groups: less than 20 degrees, 20 to 25 degrees, 25 to 32 degrees, and 32 to 40 degrees. For hot weather conditions, the temperature is broken up into 4 groups: when the air temperature is greater than 100 degrees, or it's 90 degrees with an 8-mile-an-hour wind. Additional shading is required when it's greater than 115 degrees, or when it's 105 degrees and the wind velocity is greater than 8 miles an hour. The mortar must be kept less than 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The flush mixer and mortar transport on boards to keep cool. The mortar must be used within a 2-hour period. Ice may be permitted to add to the mixing water, but that ice must be removed from the water prior to mixing, and you must fog the masonry 3 times a day for 3 days.